So we've done some talking about why the European countries were involved in World War I, but now it's important to understand why the United States came in and why they came in when they came in, because there were several factors that led to that United States involvement during World War I. So our guiding question tonight, I want you to make sure that you can answer this in a complete answer. Why did the United States join World War I? And how did their involvement impact the outcome of the war? So throughout the majority of World War I, the Americans responded with neutrality. They did not want to be involved with things. They felt like this was a completely European-based thing. So they were neutral. Woodrow Wilson was the president throughout this time period, and he kind of led that idea of neutrality. However, we were still kind of united and tied with Britain because of our economic, cultural, and linguistic or language ties with the country. Most Americans at the time were anti-German, and that was due to propaganda, and we're going to talk about propaganda a little bit later on in this presentation. Despite our ideas of neutrality, we are still going to be involved with France and Great Britain, and we're going to do that basically by allowing them to buy our products, and that could be war goods, that could be food, that could be uniforms, anything along those lines. We're going to allow them to buy from us. Americans also gave private loans to the Allies. Now, we didn't, as a country, give them, a whole lot of money, but private banks decided that they were going to give loans for the Allies because of the economic interests that were involved with staying a part of this. So while all of this is going on, Germany is continually threatening the United States. They want the United States to be involved with things. They want to try to incite us or ignite us as much as possible. So the things that Germany was doing, they were being essentially kept out of trade by the British blockade. Then they began submarine warfare. And that was just around the British Isles. And they were doing that so that they could break through the blockade. They wanted to get through the blockade and get to the United States. So German warned Americans that those merchant ships might sink as their submarines are breaking further and further through the blockade. So Woodrow Wilson experiences he runs for president. He becomes, he's reelected and basically on this promise of neutrality. I'm going to do everything I can to keep the United States out of war. But then there's going to be these steps that kind of lead us to almost, they just backed us into a corner. So in 1917, Germany announces unrestricted submarine warfare. So that's just what I was just talking about, that idea that the German submarines were breaking through the blockade and coming towards the United States. And actually, there were several U-boats that were sunk on the coast of North Carolina. And the majority of North Carolina's involvement during the World War I was defending our coastline. Then the United States finds the Zimmermann telegram. And we're going to look at the Zimmermann telegram in class tomorrow. But the Zimmermann telegram basically was from Germany to Mexico. And we know that Mexico is, of course, right there on our border. And Germany is basically asking Mexico to be a part of the war, to be on their side of things. They say all of these nasty things about Woodrow Wilson. So it was just kind of a way for us to further be, a part of this World War I issue. Then we have some overt acts. Overt acts are acts that you just can't ignore. The German U-boats sank 4 unarmed American merchant vessels in 2 weeks. So merchant vessels are vessels that might be carrying American goods. So that obviously was a huge attack, and we have seen that in the past, with various parts of history, that if you attack American ships, essentially is an attack on America. And then April 6th of 1917, The United States finally declares war because of all of these German actions. So submarine warfare. Like I earlier mentioned, the Germans flat out gave the Americans warning, saying, listen, there's a chance that your merchant ships might get hit. And obviously 4 of those merchant ships were hit. It reaches a crisis point, or a point of really we can't ignore this anymore, after the Lusitania, which is a ship, was torpedoed in 1915. The Lusitania was a passenger ship, so it was very similar to like what the Titanic might have been. So on that ship, there are 128 Americans that die as it's torpedoed. Then we have the Sussex Pledge. Germany promised that they would not sink unarmed ships without warnings. That was a result of all of these things. Of course, they really didn't follow through with that promise. So one of the things that Woodrow Wilson wanted as an outcome of the war was the 14 points. And this is going to be one of the things that we talk about when we talk about the treaty that ended World War I. But it made Wilson kind of the morale leader, or the moral leader of the Allied cause. It kind of gave him this figurehead, like, I, have these great ideas kind of, situation. The goal was to keep Russia in the war and to boost the morale of the troops. So the key ideas within the 14 points, it's to abolish secret treaties, freedom of the seas, free trade, reduction of armaments, to reduce that idea of militarism, readjustment of those colonial claims, specifically in Northern Africa, and then self-determination. The 14th point, and the one that was the most debated, was the creation of the League of Nations. That was the one that really kind of gave a lot of problems when we were looking at this idea of Wilson's 14 points. So propaganda during World War I, propaganda is going to really lead a lot of Americans to form some hasty opinions about the Germans. That these Germans were these scary, horrible people. So the government actually creates this, and it's through the public, or the Committee on Public Information, that a lot of these propaganda posters and movies are going to be created. The goal was to sell the war to America and to convince the world that Woodrow Wilson, had these great ideas, and that it was really important that we listen to Woodrow Wilson. Things that you might see in those propaganda posters: 4-Minute Men. There were also movies. There were songs. Okay? Anti-Germanism. Basically the idea that Germany was this horrible place. Really, really, really kind of came to a really peak when this was going on. So keep in mind all of these ideas of propaganda posters and why Americans joined World War I for our class discussion tomorrow. Good luck, guys.